Well, it's time for our newsreel where we delve into different topical conversations with different opinion leaders. My name is Olive Monica Najoma and you're watching Good Morning Uganda here, coming to you live from the broadcast house here at Nile Avenue. This is Uganda Broadcasting Corporation. Thank you for joining us. Now, today we will be speaking matters community, matters outreach, matters how do we enrich our communities, should we also call it corporate responsibility, and so much more. Today, I will be speaking to Lions Club International, and the matter on the table is how Ugandans in distress have benefited from the club donations. I'll be having this conversation with amazing people that will tell us more about Lions Club, what they have done, their achievements, and what plans they have for the future, but also the challenges, and also what events are happening in the club, what to be excited for. So stick around with us because this is going to be a very enlightening conversation. I'll be speaking to Mr. Benon Katate, who is the District Governor, Lions Club Uganda, and Nancy Nyamweya, who is the Marketing Chairperson, and also Mr. Julius Tumuhimbise, who is the Cabinet Secretary, Lions District 411 Uganda. Good morning and welcome, Mr. Katate, Ms. Nancy, and Mr. Tumuhimbise.
Good morning to you, moderator, and good morning to all our viewers and listeners.
Thank you so much for being here with us. Nancy, you're welcome.
Thank you very much, moderator. Good morning, everyone. We are so excited to be here as Lions.
And Mr. Tumuhimbise,
yes.
I hope you're having a beautiful morning.
Yeah,
yes.
Thank you. Very beautiful morning. Good morning, UBC, and good morning, our viewers. And we are happy to be here to share with our viewers this morning.
Okay, now we get into the meat of our conversation, and I will start with Mr. Katate here, who is the district governor. Please give us a brief background on Lions Club and what it stands for, because for a moment there, I almost thought this was Rotary, but you said it's different, though they almost do the same thing. So please tell us about Lions Club.
Thank you, moderator, for this opportunity. Lions Clubs is about giving, caring, and sharing to individuals and communities in our setups where we are. It's part of the Lions District 411B, which is Uganda, is part of Lions International. This is a worldwide voluntary service club organization, which is over 100 years, having started in 1917 in Chicago in the United States. And we do our work through clubs. We establish clubs all over, and in Uganda we have 55 clubs and 2,100 members. And in these clubs, once we establish them, they belong to the communities. We invite people to join them, and they lead them and make their decisions as to what is painful or what is wanting in their communities, and then they put together their heads and other sources, which include their time. They put their time aside to meet. They do a needs assessment of the problems in their communities. They put resources, which can be mental, that is investing in terms of knowing what to do. Then physical, sometimes physical participation, and then financial and other sources. This can take shapes of, for example, a dirty street, a dirty town, which they can clean up. It can take situations like missing water. They create water for their operation. Creating awareness about a problem like diabetes or poor eyesight care, which is abundant, but many people don't know that they are not seeing. And like that, then they create solutions and they make the communities better. And thank you for this opportunity to talk about betterment of our communities. One way of doing it is self-engagement as communities. Coming together as a group of people, and you do a needs assessment of your problems, you put your heads together, and you structure or tailor solutions for your community. That's how we do it in brief.
Wow, amazing, amazing. Giving back to the community and doing things that enrich the community is one thing that takes selflessness. Not selfishness, but selflessness. So Lions Club is doing an amazing job. Now, Nancy, I would like to come to you. How have distressed Ugandans benefited from the donations that the members contribute to the club?
Thank you very much, moderator. Once again, Lion Nancy Nyamweya, the marketing chairperson. And I'm so excited that we are here today as Lions. As our district governor has mentioned, we are passionate people and who are so passionate to give service back to the community. And how has the community benefited from Lions Clubs International? First and foremost, I must say that we are basically supplementing the efforts of the government of Uganda, and we want to thank so much the government of Uganda for giving us the conducive environment to do that. First and foremost, we support so much in healthcare and medical support. And as Lions Clubs International, we have areas where we really focus on. One of them is free eye care and vision programs, and that was basically one of the major, the beginning, the foundation of Lions Clubs International. We do a lot of eye screenings, we give glasses, we do cataract surgeries, among many others. Still in healthcare, we do diabetes awareness and support. We know that now non-communicable diseases, whereby diabetes is one of them, is one of the rising, infections or diseases in the country. So we do a lot of awareness, and even those, we do a lot of screening. And those who already had diabetic, we give support in one way or the other. Still in healthcare, we do childhood cancer support, whereby Lions Clubs International helps children battling by cancer by funding treatment and providing emotional support. And still in healthcare, we do blood donations. Clubs across the country and the Lions Clubs International at large, they usually organize blood donations where people voluntarily donate blood, which supports the lives of the needy in hospitals. That's part of the healthcare. Two, we do a lot of education and youth empowerment. And in youth empowerment, we have a program which we call the Leos Club. Leos basically is leadership, experience, and opportunity. We empower the young people to grow up to be great leaders in the future, because our time is going and we shall fade off and the young people will come in. So these Leos can be either community-based or even in schools. And basically we are doing very well in Uganda. Most universities, secondaries, even primaries, we have those Leos Club, and we are training them to be great leaders in the future. And they have numerous activities they do to serve and give back to the community. We do hunger and poverty relief, whereby we have feeding programs. Like now, our international Lions Clubs chairperson, Lions Clubs International chairperson is coming. We shall be going even to Karamoja, where we have feeding program in schools. So we do a lot of hunger food programs either in schools and even in communities. We don't only give support the material, the food and all that, we also give skills to the communities, like kitchen gardenings. And it is amazing to see that some clubs in different parts of the country, they are engaging the communities and promoting kitchen gardens, so that we don't only provide, but we also do food security in one way or the other. We also do environment protection, and in environment, when you have a good environment, you will have a better place to stay. We do a lot of tree planting, and climate action. We do cleaning and water sanitation. Waste management is one of our passionate area, among many others. We also support in emergency and disaster relief. And I know you know, moderator, that we have been having some disasters in the country, the floods, the landslides, and other disasters. So we come in, like the floods in Kasese, the clubs in District 411B, which is Uganda, we supported in one way or the other. And then, of course, strengthening communities and social connection.
Now, Nancy, a question here goes, what criteria do you use to choose the beneficiaries?
The criteria definitely, like I've mentioned about the disasters, it will be definite. It's obvious where the disasters occurred, we shall come in and support. But as Lions Clubs International and the Lions Club District 411B, we have clubs locally. And these clubs locally, they do needs assessment in their communities, and they identify the people who are needy to be supported. So each club does a needs assessment, and then of course they come up with a plan on how to give services in their areas.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yes.
I am speaking to representatives from the Lions Club, and they are taking us through how they help, or how the donations that come from the club members benefit distressed Ugandans. And I'm speaking to Mr. Benon Katate, who is the District Governor Uganda, Nancy Nyamweya, who is the Marketing Chairperson, and also Mr. Julius Tumuhimbise, who is the Cabinet Secretary, Lions District 411, Uganda. Now, Mr. Tumuhimbise, I do understand that you have a distinguished guest that is coming to Uganda. Tell us more about him, and why is it important for him to be here? Why is it exciting for him to be here?
Thank you, UBC, once again. Lion CPA Julius, the Cabinet Secretary of Lions of Uganda District 411B. When we talk about District 411B, we mean the Lions of Uganda. It covers actually the whole district. I want to bring it back slightly that Lions International, we say all over the world, Lions serve the less privileged. And we believe everyone, as an individual, you have somebody who is less privileged that you can serve. And we have our motto, which is called We Serve. And actually all over the world, we are over 1.4 million people, and we are in over 203 geographical areas. So we are a huge humanitarian organization that moves all over the world to impact the less privileged, and we do it in 8 global causes, and my colleagues have talked about them, but if you want to make it easy, you would know that we do vision, we do diabetes, we do hunger, we do disaster relief, we do environment, we do LEOs and youth, and then humanitarian efforts. And we've done that for over the many years. But this time around, we as Lions, we are very highly excited, mainly as Lions in Uganda, because we are hosting our international dignitaries. And these are ladies and women who have taken up their time and skill to lead this organization at a global level. Obviously, when we talk at a global level, we have, whereas we are one big umbrella organization, but we operate in two units, one being Lions International and another one being Lions International Foundation. Lions International is the arm that does the service that we have talked about through the clubs to serve the less privileged. And then Lions International Foundation, it is an arm that fundraises and manages the monies of this Lions International, so that over time they are able to finance or fund numerous projects all over the world. And actually in Uganda, in the last 10 years, we've handled, I think, projects of over $10 million. And this time, we as Lions of Uganda, we are highly excited because we are hosting the LCIF chairperson. Now, LCIF is what I've talked about, the Lions Clubs International Foundation. And to be the chairperson of the foundation, you should have been an international president. So we are hosting Lion Dr. Patty Hill, a lady from Canada who was our international president last year, and currently she is our chairperson of Lions International Foundation. In a few hours from now, we shall be at Entebbe Airport to welcome her with her spouse. And they usually come, like any governance or like an organization where you do oversight. They usually do visits all over the world to check out on the projects they have implemented. Our program is quite extensive, and we financed a project, a pharmacy in Mulago for cancer, and we are launching it today. And if it wasn't for slight delays, they would have been there, and the outbreak, they would have been there to launch that pharmacy that focuses on medicine of childhood cancer. Then later, we have done a vision clinic at Nsambya Hospital, which we shall also be, it is an over 1 billion plus project for the vision eyesight clinic. We have put a structure obviously in collaboration with Nsambya Hospital, which you will also be visiting.
Okay.
As you've heard, we have projects in Karamoja, and we have also done work at School of the Deaf in Ntinda. So her being here, we'll be discussing as Lions also to understand the status of Lionism in Uganda, but also looking at projects that they have financed, obviously in collaboration with the local Lions that you've heard that are over 20,000, because with actually the current trends in the world where the direct funding from international communities is reducing, Lions clubs come as a good organizing, because for us, we locally fundraise from our own pockets or from our little resources in addition to what we get from international community, which means our sustainability is already given because we are already doing it. So for us, whether, I don't want to mention names, whether they cut the funding and all that,
yes.
For us, we are not threatened.
You're not threatened.
Because we are already doing that.
You're already self-sustaining.
A club in Arua will fundraise and serve their local community.
Okay.
A
Thank
club
you
in
so
Isinjiro will also do that. A club in Kampala Central in Imbarara. So they just top up, but at least our sustainability as clubs, the 55 governor talked about, which we are building to over 60, is already given, and we believe we shall continue serving our community and lessening the burden of this world hassles.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Tumuhimbise. Now, as we close, I'll come back to the district governor for his parting remarks on today's event, the guests that are coming, but also a question from me, but I think from many Ugandans right now. What inspires the club's commitment to humanitarian efforts in Uganda? And what you say will be your parting remarks.
Yeah, our inspiration comes from our ancestors who created this organization. We have seen many things happen in communities. If I give you a historical perspective of Uganda, we have done tremendous work. There was a dehumanizing and debilitating disease called river blindness. You may not know about it because we have eliminated it. It was in over 20 focus areas. These are big places with over 5 million people. And what happened was that this disease was eating up people. You know, the skins become like those of elephants. They are in pain, they are itching all the time. It finally graduates in blindness. So working with other partners, we financed this treatment for over 20 years. And you know what? As I talk, World Health Organization has declared Uganda river blindness free.
Wow, wow, amazing work.
That
well
is
done.
Probably 10 plus million people who have survived this disease, including this region where we are. Almost every hospital in Uganda, the eye department of almost every hospital, we have put there something, either a physical block or equipment or a trained person to do the treatment. We have done so many cataract surgeries and reversed blindness of many people. So that's a lot of inspiration that we build from.
And I believe, Governor, that so much more has been done to help different communities.
Yes.
Unfortunately, we can't share all because time has run out, but thank you so much for all the work that you do, and on behalf of all the Ugandans that have benefited from the works of Lions International, thank you. Well, Good Morning Uganda does continue. We have an interesting conversation coming up next with Pastor Martin Semper. He believes that polygamy should be considered as part of Christian marriages. Why is this so? Join the conversation.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala, this is Good Morning Uganda. In a nation hungry for truth, a world where every story matters, there exists a beacon of trust and reliability. For decades, they've been our voice and our window to the world, holding the mirror of our history. With 4 TV stations and 11 radio channels spanning 27 languages, they stand as guardians of information, defenders of truth. With Mascari Heritage Advantage, they uphold every citizen's right to reliable and free information. Their archived stories shaped our past and illuminate our present. Yet now, as new challenges arise and the world evolves, their mission faces its greatest test yet. Be part of our journey and let's navigate the unknown, uncover the untold, and safeguard our future together. Tune into your public broadcaster, for it is the intersection of trust and truth. Because to UBC, your story, every story, and every voice matters. UBC, inspiring Uganda.
The circle started 5 years back with 15 members who were part of the executive, and we managed to use the same 15 members to mobilize the youth and come in to make the 16 associations. So each member took a thought of gathering, mobilizing the 15 people to make associations. So the circle was established. We happened to have 229 members that qualified for 30 millions, which we got in 2021. We used the 30 millions from the presidential initiative to buy the 6 motorcycles, which was a small number to benefit the 229 members, but we managed to use it. The 6 boda helped us to go under saving culture. We managed to group our members into 15-15 for saving culture. So the saving culture is 15 groups. They could get 12,000 per day, which 12,000 at the end of the month manages to buy 1 motorcycle. That 1 motorcycle is shared among the 15, so they vote who to take it. The 15 kept on until the 15 months. Every member had to get 1 motorcycle with saving culture. As I say, we managed to get 84 motorcycles from today's report. On daily, a rider, you move Kawempe, Nakawaru, Makinde, you Kampala Metropolitan, and at the end of the day, you have 50,000. That one, we call it average day. There is a time you make 100, that is, we call it the golden day. So most of our members came without anything to use or to support their family. So we helped them by giving them the boda as one of the job opportunity the circle is offering to the community.
Tuso okwebaza President Museveni olw'enkola eno gyatutereddewo otukulaakulanya nga najja wano mu ssaka eno nga sirina piki era ndi omu ku bammemba abaasooka okufuna lupiki. Kati abavubuka abali bateesobola kugula piki wano kibakyama kuba ogula buguzi migabo $5,000 ng'ofuna piki ng'otandika obulamu. Ate ku layisi tuli bangi kuba omuntu tolina $5 million zigula mpya 5 kitundu. Oba oguze emigabo ate nga gijjo n'otandikira okwo tolaba nti oba ofunyemu abantu abali batalina mirimu bagifuna wawo guno mulimu nno gwe nnyini tugufunyemu singa simaanyi ga mulimu guno kitegeeza nandibadde sikola ki sina ngeri ki gye nyiza bikwasaganya abaana basoma era muki okulya byonna bakwesanyusaamu era kiki era nkutwalanga ensonga enkulu kuba ngufunamu gubinkolera go ge mazima gubinkolera ddala bulungi mukadde tajjula maama gwe nninawe yekka oba oli awo akasimu ante kino bakiri mugira nga noteekayo n'omusingi ante kino egamba tosobola kulwamu ki sente
ebyenfuna byange byali bibi ddala naye mu bbanga ery'emyezi 9 wenfunidde piki aye obulamu bwakyukira ddala kubanga siganye nakati nkyapangisa naye luli eri nga landirodyako netutandika nga odduka nosanga nga basiirinze nawo naye kati nsobola omusasula nina omukyala n'abaana bendabirira nsobola okubaliisa bulungi nnyo nga embeera etambula era njagala okwebaza omukulembeze w'eggwanga tujjukira nga ffe abavubuka n'atuleetera pulojekiti eno ey'emyoga kuba ne mami wange saazina neenyumirizaamu kuba akubira akasimu n'omuweerezaayo omutwalo oba 2 kuba oba ozirina njagala otwala omukisa guno okwebaza omukulembeze w'eggwanga olw'okutulowoozaako nga ffe abavubuka n'atuleetera pulojekiti y'emyoga ne tutandika okufuna ku mirimu ne tufuna ebyokukola twabeerangaawo nga tulina byakukola tutambula butambuzi nakuzzabuza misango naye kati okuva pulojekiti y'emyoga yeyajja kati tukola era sente zaffe tuzirabako era olw'okuba nti nasiima nze ng'omuntu nasalawo n'ekifaananyi kya pulezidenti Museveni kitambuze mu Kampala yonna mwenkolera okubalaga nti pulezidenti Museveni yantuusizza ku kino kuba nekolera sente zange era nzifuna era nzirabako.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala, this is Good Morning Uganda.
Good morning, Uganda. Now, today we have an exciting conversation. A conversation I believe will get you thinking deeper and questioning some of the beliefs that you've had, but also considering new dimensions depending on the beliefs that you had, especially about marriage. My name is Olive Monica Najuma, and Chirabo Robert Nyonyintono is with me today. And also our special guest, Pastor Martin Semper. Now, if you know your Bible well, it shows that in the Old Testament, there were different polygamous marriages therein. But then in the New Testament, it became, for lack of a better word, evil for a man to take on more than one wife. But now, Pastor Martin Semper argues that polygamy should be considered as part of Christian marriages. And he says a man or someone who decides to take on another wife should not be considered unchristian just because they are in a polygamous marriage. This would also include the women that would be in the polygamous marriages. What's your view on that? Let's have an understanding. Is Pastor Martin Semper correct in his beliefs and in his arguments, or you think he's going off the rail? I would like to hear from you. Join the conversation through the WhatsApp number that is displayed on your screen. It is 0709 602 592. Now, still speaking about marriage, it is when you follow the scriptures, it shows again, in as much as in the Old Testament there were polygamous marriages. We know kings like Solomon, kings like David that had more than one wife. But we also know that in the beginning, God said a man will leave his parents and cleave to his wife, not wives. So why the change, and why is Pastor Martin Semper arguing against this ordination in the Bible? Good morning, Pastor Martin. Hi, I'm glad to have you. Happy New Year.
Thank you, Chirabo. How are you?
I'm Olive.
Is it Olive?
That is Chirabo Nyonyintono.
Hey, oh my gosh. Hey, Chirabo. Hi, Olive.
Yes.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you so much for coming in. And I'm curious. Let's start with the scripture which says that a man leaves his family and he joins with his wife, and the two shall become one. Not the three shall become one, or not the four. So, based on that scripture, where are your arguments coming from?
Thanks. Let's give the context. First of all,
Yes.
I'm Pastor Semper. I'm a pastor from Makerere Community Church. My work is being at the university, being at the forefront of debating new ideas.
Yes.
Both old and new, and substantively examining even what is existent. So the current debate is about my submissions to the Parliamentary Committee on the Honorable Sarah Opendi's bill on marriage and family, which intends to provide, to govern, and to make legislation on marriage and family in Uganda for every kind of marriage and family, cultural, this and that. So I appeared before that committee yesterday, and I made some recommendations, amongst which include the recognition of polygamy as part of the Christian marriages. I need you to get the context. When you get the context, then you understand better. So I gave about 4 major submissions. Number 1, we need to have a cabinet minister of marriage and family, because in this country we have neglected marriage and family. We have institutional cabinet positions for all other. We have Minister of Luwero, Minister of Karamoja, Minister for Elderly, we have Minister for Gender, we have Minister for almost everything, but we don't have a cabinet minister for marriage and family, who wakes up every morning, just like maybe on land issue, the Honorable Judith Nabakova and Sam Mayanja. They wake up every morning. How do we reduce land conflicts? How do we make land ownership stronger in Uganda? What are the causes of conflicts? How do we resolve them? So I made a submission that we need someone who knows how many people entered into marriage last year, how many marriages broke down, what are the causes of that breakdown, how can we strengthen them, and then how do we prepare the next generation for marriage. That's one of my recommendations. The second recommendation I gave included the issue of recognizing Christian marriage, polygamous Christian marriages. Now, I wanted to know that sometimes you may be tolerant of another, okay? The question at the heart of this issue is, what makes a Christian? What makes a Christian? Can you be a Christian if you have more than one wife, or can you not be? And to me, I cannot answer and say that if you have more than one wife, you cannot be a Christian. Regardless of what you think about it, how you feel about it. So, for me, I want people to know I teach monogamy. You know, monogamous marriage. I promote monogamous marriage. I live monogamous marriage. That's my teaching in my church. But I also realize that there are other Christians who preach both monogamous and polygamous marriages. I recognize there's other Christians who practice polygamous marriage. Okay? One of our leaders in the Ministry of Justice has come publicly and he has 4 wives. And I cannot say that man is not a Christian.
Just because he has 4 wives.
I cannot. Absolutely. And I mean, it will be embarrassing. I don't want to mention their names, but I think there is a recognition for me as a scholar, okay, that the best kind of marriage is monogamous. And that's God's ideal. That's what God planned in ideal. But I also realize that in a world that we live in, there has been others who have chosen to be polygamous. And they have also been believers. Abraham, David, Isaac, Jacob. You cannot say those are not believers. So it's uncomfortable for people to hear. But people say, "Oh, Pastor, you are blurring the lines. We are trying to make sure we overcome polygamy." Look, to me the issue here is, let me put it very bluntly. 2 years ago, at the Uganda Matters Catholic celebration in Namugongo, the celebrant gave a sermon. At the conclusion, he said, if you have 3 wives, according to our teaching, go and chase away wife number 3. And then in the next year, chase away wife number 2. And then remain with only 1. Now, I have reflected over this for a long time. Since the question is, why do we have to break up families for people to be called and keep their faith? Why? I don't think so. The Bible specifically says the qualification of bishops, they should be the husbands of but 1 wife. Specifically. The Bible also says, for this reason a man shall leave his mother and father, and they shall become one
flesh.
He teaches that clearly.
Yes.
And then excludes bishops to have only, very specific. But I cannot say that Mr. Chirabo, if he has 2 wives and he chooses to believe the Lord Jesus Christ, that he should chase away his wife.
Okay.
I can teach him the disadvantages of polygamy, but I cannot say he is not a Christian. Now, because I'm an independent thinker, okay, there's a lot of people who do things because they are afraid, because of tradition. I want to recognize that there's other Christians who are polygamous. Okay. And the law has no business discriminating which kind of person is a Christian and not.
So which law are we talking about here? Are we talking about our law as Ugandans, or are we talking about the law as according to the Bible? We need to distinguish that.
Well, I want to take, I was, again, context. I was appearing before the Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee yesterday, and I was making submissions to the Parliament, which is a legislative arm for everybody in Uganda. And for me, as a leading thinker of the country, a member of the intellectual class, a Christian thought leader, I made recommendations which included that Christian polygamous marriages should also be included as part of the Christian marriages. Now, in Kenya, right now, there is a gentleman by the name of Wanyama. I've just shared with you that example that we are forcing people to break down. Wanyama has written a book, Polygamists Also Go to Heaven. He has 2 wives. He's trying to marry his 2nd wife. The law in Kenya says you can only have 1 wife. And he said, look, I have my 2nd wife. I want to marry her in a church which is willing, because it is of that persuasion, but the law says you can't. So I'm saying the law has no business determining which kind of person is a Christian and which one is not.
Okay.
Now, I am of that persuasion. I want to give the other 3 suggestions that I gave. I gave a suggestion about the issue of adultery. I say to them that in 2003, 2004, feminists led by Professor Tamale litigated to remove the adultery clause out of the penal code. And because of that, we've had 20 years of no law if John and Mary are married and one of them finds the other in adultery. You remember, I think it was the police spokesperson Enanga, about 1 year ago, he came up and he said that married people, if you have trouble with adultery, don't come to police. You remember that?
Yes, I do.
Now that's very, very unfortunate. Very unfortunate, because we need, you can't be a lawless society. If we make an agreement that you are my wife, I'm your husband, and I make promise of this regard, if there's failure in that, I should have at least have a recourse if I find my wife being taken by another man. So I asked the members of parliament that we should put that clause back in. The other one that I gave is called the alienation of affection. Alienation of affection is a clause that has been in many jurisdictions where if someone uses their position to seduce the affection of your wife, of your husband away from you, and you can prove it, and that spouse ends up drifting away from you, you can be able to go to court and say that this person alienated the affection of my spouse. Maybe they used their position as a boss at the workplace, maybe they used their position as a teacher or whatever it is to seduce. So that should also be put in. Right now it's in 2 jurisdictions, in Hawaii and I think North Carolina, but it's been diminishing a lot. But it's very helpful where women go to the workplace or men traditionally at the workplace. But women, because they're in the workplace, sometimes they are now facing a challenge of workplace relationships. So that was a second. Then the other 2 that I gave was the issue of conjugal rights, because it's amongst the causes of problems is the lack of conjugal access. Now, Sarah Opendi's law says that if you get married and you don't have sex within 6 months, that marriage is void. And they will say, should we do 3 months? Do we do 6 months? So I said, you realize that sex is at the heart of a marriage.
Yes.
And that's great. But then the daily exercise of the desire for sex from the husband and the wife, sometimes there's a mismatch. So I made a recommendation which is rooted out of science. You see, for women, a woman's sexual cycle it's maybe about 4 or 5 days. During ovulation is the time where a woman has greatest interest in sex. So there is a time of menstruation, pre-menstruation, and then there is a time of ovulation, and then post-ovulation. Now, the greatest time of that woman is interested in sexual activity is in those days of ovulation. So you may say maybe 5 days. Now, for the man, he is interested in sexual relations 30 days out of 30 days. Now, sometimes there's a mismatch between these two because the man wants to have relations and the woman does, oh, I have a headache today, oh, I'm thinking that this, and this causes violence, this causes a breakdown. You remember there was an old man, 100 years in Kasese, about 8 months ago. He killed his wife, who was about the same age, 101.
Over denial
of conjugal rights. And I said, this is terrible. But we need as a society to think through and how to stop this from happening. The gentleman now is in jail and all he wanted was sex. Now, how do we resolve that issue? Amongst my suggestions include, number 1, Christian polygamy. Number 2, spelling out specifically conjugal right 3 times a week. We must have, if we have minimum broadcasting standards, okay, you can't say certain things. We call those minimum. So I suggested to the committee that we should have minimum conjugal rights standards of at least sex 3 times a week.
Hey.
When you get married, please be serious about this issue. You get married, you know that in this relationship as a wife, I'm responsible for providing conjugal relations to my husband, and there is no fighting about it. Because sometimes some women, they said, oh, I have a headache, oh, you haven't brought money, you haven't paid rent, and many you haven't paid bride price, and these are causes of animosity and domestic violence. So, whereas my proposal on the issue of including the issue of Christian polygamy under Christian marriage, caused a lot of, and I think also the minimum conjugal standards of 3 times a week. I think a lot of people are discussing it. My thoughts are well thought out. I think we need to be fearless thinkers who now we have a chance as African theologians. I think that there is a lot of our theology that is rooted in Europe. Okay, the Europeans are very averse to polygamy. They think it's like the worst thing that came out in the world, yet they are very open to such an aberration like homosexuality. Now, and many of us, we've got this very averse, we think that people who have more than one wife are the worst kinds of people.
Okay, now Pastor Sempa,
I completely disagree with that.
Okay, let's put things into context even more. When you look at the marriages that are recognized by the law in the country, we have Muhammad marriages, but still I believe that the law bases on the structures of the religions those marriages are based on. So for Muslims, they can have 4 wives. For Christians, because Christian marriage is based on the Bible, which says a man should have 1 wife, that's where the law comes from. Then when you look at civil marriage also precipitates that there should be 1 wife and 1 husband. Now, traditional marriage is potentially polygamous. So when you say that Christian marriages should become, those that have polygamous marriages when they are Christians, don't we have to also go back to the Christian leaders and have them change the tenets that run their religions, their denominations?
I'm sitting in front of you. I'm a Christian leader.
Yes, you are. Are you willing to change? Because again, as a Christian leader, you base your teachings on the Bible. And yes, in as much as there was polygamy in the Old Testament, in the New Testament, in the letters of different letters, for instance, you did mention something Paul said, where he said bishops should be blameless, okay, in 1 Timothy. I get that. But are you willing to also go and change the Bible, which your followers believe in and based on, to say, I am monogamous because the Bible says so?
Thank you. There's different kinds of theological persuasions.
Okay.
We don't all have one size that fits all. We have Christians who don't believe in birth control. Roman Catholics don't believe in injectable plan. They don't believe in the pill. IUD. They don't believe IUD. Yes. Okay, but does that not make them non-Christians? The answer is no. They're Christians who pray in tongues. Okay, and they believe that that's the sign of the Holy Spirit. Those are Pentecostals, charismatics. Now, on this issue, I'm not trying to convince one to the other. I need you to know, I am not trying to convince that polygamy is a better marriage or it is the best. No, in fact, I think it has its own challenges, okay, which I know. But I'm trying to say you cannot say biblically, according to the scripture, that a person who has more than 1 wife cannot be a Christian. There is no ink. And if I want to debate with you, I can be able to go there any day. Let's start off from Genesis to Revelation. Both the Old Testament and New Testament are one book. The promises of God are fulfilled in the New Testament. God gives us biblical law. Biblical law spells out how we live. It spells out in careful detail land boundaries, how to make oaths, how do you do restitution, going forward on marriage, how to handle jealousy, how to handle the inheritance, the firstborn. There is the biblical law. Many of the people are ignorant of biblical law. So they look at the Old Testament, something that's in the past. No, both those two are interconnected. So yesterday I had one of the members of parliament says, but Pastor, where is the Bible verse in the New Testament that shows that polygamists can also be Christians? So I said, well, it must be known that I'm not a promoter of that, but I recognize there is a section of Christians who practice and also teach it. And I brought to them John S. Mbiti, one of the great thinkers and the great theological leaders, wrote in African Traditional Religions, talks about, when I read the Bible, I don't see Christian polygamous families or monogamous families. I just see families. They sometimes come monogamous, they sometimes come polygamous. when you look at the book of Hebrews, when it's talking about the great men of faith, in the book of Hebrews, it talks about Moses, whose faith is commended. It talks about Abraham, whose faith is commended. It talks about David, who is called a man after God's own heart. David had more than one wife.
Yes.
Okay, the psalms that we sing were written by a man who had more than one wife. Now, there is a disconnect in our mind where we think that you cannot be a Christian if you have more than one wife. Look, you asked me for a scripture in the New Testament. I ask you, go to the book of Hebrews. Does the Bible say that Abraham was a bad man? David, does it say he was a bad man? It talks about Moses. It talks about Isaac. It talks about Jacob. Now, you cannot come to me and say, I cannot be a Christian. And you cannot say that there is no evidence in the New Testament that disallows polygamy. No. I think in some ways we have a cultural issue. One, our theology was greatly brought to us and impacted by the culture of the Europeans. The Bible is written in the Middle East, okay? Semitic Middle East. Ancestors, Abraham up to wherever, are polygamous. Some are monogamous and polygamous. It's not out of the ordinary. But the missionaries who brought us, I remember in the book called Letters to My Sister, Alexander Mackay writes in his biography his first sermon in the Buganda Palace when he preaches before Kabaka Mutesa. This is about 1890, I think, somewhere around there. So when it was a very difficult time, him arriving. He's from Scotland. He studied, he was a student of engineering, a great leader. So he preaches the gospel to Mutesa at the palace. And Mutesa says, I am willing to become a Christian. Can you lead me to become a Christian? Then Mackay, who is a great hero, I commend him, says, you cannot be a Christian if you have more than one wife. On the day you become a Christian, you have to give up all your wives. Now, this issue became a very big contentious issue. And it's an issue of debate. Now, many of us would rather avoid it. But it's something that we need to deal with it. I told you in at the Catholic celebration, people are being told on Uganda Matters that if you have more than one, go and chase the two away. I'm of a different opinion. I'm like, no, I don't think so. In West Africa, the Methodist Church, when it was dealing with this issue, said, okay, if you are going to have more than one, you can't be a leader in the church. And then number two, it says you can only be allowed to be in the church if before you became a Christian, you were polygamous. Yeah. Don't become polygamous
when you're in the church.
You see, I respect that. I respect that. But this complete blanket denial that says this doesn't exist, you cannot be a Christian. It's an issue in our community, and I think some people are going to make choices. So in Kenya today, Mr. Wanyama has written the book called Polygamists Will Also Go to Heaven.
Maybe Olive, I think I should come in here.
Let me finish this point. So Mr. Wanyama has sued the Attorney General of Kenya, and he is saying that you have denied me a chance to marry my second wife because of the law that says you cannot have a Christian marriage where you have more than one wife. And I'm like, look, we are not of all the same. The government cannot be in the business of saying that Christians are the only ones who pray in tongues, are the only ones who are Pentecostals,
but you know,
are the only ones who do this.
Pastor Semper, you can't say the government cannot be in the business of saying
Christians
Christians cannot be polygamous, but then you're calling the same government to come and say we should have at least a minimum of 3 nights of conjugal rights. You're calling the government into your business where it benefits you and where it doesn't benefit you. You're saying government should not be involved.
No, I think they're two different matters. One is discrimination, which is provided for in the Constitution. You cannot discriminate, like we are dealing with the issue now at Makerere University. The Catholics, Muslims, and Anglicans are provided for, but the born-again Pentecostals are not provided for. That's a violation of our Constitution, okay? Regardless of how you feel about other people. Now, it's the same thing in this area, that I don't think you can say Christians who have more than one wife cannot have legal status under the law. I don't think so. I don't practice polygamy. I don't promote polygamy, but I recognize inequality before the law. You cannot discriminate.
Now, Pastor, actually the first time I watched it was a TikTok clip, and I saw Pastor Semper deliberating. I first thought they had used AI for this, because when we talk about being Christians, one, you're not born a Christian. You accept to be a Christian. Not so, Pastor? And I want to take you back. I wasn't around, but at least I've been able to follow generations of Christianity, because I come from a rich Christian background, to Kutendereza and everything. I think I've seen people who have chosen to be Christians, knowing they are going to live Christian, Christ-like lives, and we have a constitution, which is the Bible. And we have the 10 Commandments, of which adultery is there, of which one is obliged, as long as you are Christian, to stick to one wife.
Is that in the 10 Commandments?
If you go through the 10 Commandments, I'll tell you that is that.
Tell me where it is.
If you commit adultery, never commit adultery.
Yeah, what is adultery?
Now, if you're already committed to someone, wedded with someone, took your vows with someone, and you get another person, what is that you're doing? We are not going to move into saying...
are you confusing marriage?
No, because...
Marriage with another wife with adultery?
Definitely, because you're being faithful to this person.
I see.
We are going to say that a Muslim who eats pig, therefore, who eats pork, therefore we can't say because we've had Muslims who eat pork, so therefore we cannot exonerate them from being Muslims simply because they choose to eat pork. Now, I've seen that Kutendereza, which I know you know very well. These are people who would convert to Christianity, and because they know what they are going into, they would say, I have these women. Now, when society goes ablaze, the abnormal will be normalized. And Pastor, this is what you're doing. You're trying to normalize a wrong thing because reality, it is happening.
Okay, allow me to respond to that.
Briefly, because I'm still... yes.
No, I'm the person who has been interviewed. If you want to be interviewed,
go ahead,
come and sit down and do your interview. Look,
I just want to...
First of all, let me ask
so
you.
you can respond to
let me ask
his
you.
first question.
Let me ask you, what's your level of education in theology?
I don't have any qualification.
Very good. So I would like for you to respect...
But at least morally...
I would like to respect pedigree. Okay, I'm a leader of the intellectual class.
But still you can be
please stay with me. Please don't just throw words around.
Gentlemen, let's come back to the conversation.
Okay, this is Africa's resistance to homosexuality. Okay, it's my second book. Okay, it's 600 pages, peer-reviewed by 2 professors. Okay, now I'm educated with my first degree is political science and political sociology. I do have to study trends of people. My second degree is biblical studies and psychological studies. It's a master's of science. My college also gave me a PhD after 10 years of work. So you're talking to a member of the academia, theology, and intellectual class. I'd like to educate you about now, first of all, the Christian movements in Uganda. You talked about the, what was that? Which movement?
The one that began the East African Revival.
Very good. Now,
is a movement.
Now, Christendom comes here with the emergence I just talked to you about, Alexander Mackay, John Ash, okay? The emergence of Christendom starts with what we know as the Church of Uganda and the Roman Catholic Church. The East African revival comes out of John Nagenda. We're looking at about 1920, 1930, a reawakening movement within the existing Anglican Church. Now, for the renewal of that, they made some decisions. They don't drink alcohol. Women don't comb their hair, okay? Now, this one will not be a Christian, okay? Amongst the Abazukufu, okay? John Nagenda at some point stopped wearing shoes because he felt that that was not the best way forward. Now, there is a recognition of good things about the Bazukufu, the local East African revival. For example, the reason why many born-agains in Uganda, we don't drink alcohol, is from the it's the East African revival. It's a good choice. But you cannot say if someone drinks alcohol, it makes them a sinner. Okay? Now, a lot of Christians in Uganda, like you, are unexposed. Okay? When you travel across the world, from Germany, England, Italy, Canada, United States, Southern Australia, Christians all over the world, they drink a glass of beer and a glass of wine along with their food, along with their parties. I do. I drink wine.
Alcoholic, non-alcoholic?
I do alcoholic wine.
Okay.
Does that mean whenever I have a party, I celebrate, like recently when Donald Trump won, after 15 years of persecution, I always do what Jesus did at the wedding of Cana. Turned water into wine. So I celebrate. Now, some of the Christians think I'm not a Christian. But you see, at some point, you get to the point where you're like, look, I'm an independent thinker. Some of my professors were from the University of Dar es Salaam. And I'm forever grateful for Professor Dungu, Professor Mamdani, who taught me at Makerere University to be an independent thinker. This is a character of members of the intellectual class. We can't all go. So, what I was discussing yesterday is constitutionalism. In constitutionalism, you cannot, the state cannot say we only recognize one kind of Christian. Now, I am Pentecostal charismatic. You may be Roman Catholic. You may be Seventh-day Adventist. You may be Jehovah's Witnesses. You may be Mormons. I don't agree with you. But I recognize your right to have a family, to have a legal status for your marriage. Now, a lot of people may misunderstand me. They say, oh, Pastor Sempa is now pushing polygamy. I'm not pushing polygamy. I'm asking that the law be implemented to stop discriminating against minorities or other groups that are not approved by the majorities.
Now, Pastor, that said, I beg to understand from you, you preside over marriages.
I do.
Current constitution.
I do. I also provide counseling. I provide therapy. I do pre-marriage counseling, which is why when I say that we do need, by the way, like I said, I gave 5 policy positions.
Which actually,
and a lot of the people,
the 5 policy positions, I agree with you 100%, except on one.
That's fine.
Except on one. And I love the fact that you're an independent thinker, like you said, and you're a scholar. No doubt we've had scholars that have come out with very brilliant ideas, but also we've had scholars that have messed society and community. No doubt about that. It's a two-way. Now, Pastor, we are looking at a constitutional process. And I love the fact that they brought in independent minds, like you say, to give their independent view of it. But also we know that our constitution recognizes different types of marriages that can allow what you're talking about to be done there. But then the constitution looks at the fact that if for you subscribe to this particular, because of that particular, we come with our diversities. But each of our diversity, if you belong to a particular form of diversity, you must abide by that diversity.
And that's exactly what I'm targeting. I'm saying
now, I'm looking at Pastor Martin Sempa. I'm wedded. Let me just read this briefly.
Please, let's get to the heart of this matter. You cannot say that a person cannot be a Christian if he has more than one wife. That's the heart of the matter.
So are you looking at those that already have?
No, look.
I can even still get.
Regardless.
Like the Kenya incident.
Regardless. People are free.
Would
People
you
may
wed
have
me
this-
with wife number one?
I
and I come and wed me with wife
not
number
me,
two?
but there are others who do that.
Pastor Sempa.
Mr. Chirabo,
Pastor
let me just finish with this. Mr. Chirabo, I don't conduct polygamous weddings in my church, but I do
But
recognize...
if the law you're pushing for allows, then you will be obliged to conduct them.
Please allow me to finish.
You'll be obliged.
You seem to be quite upset. And you are losing objectivity. Now, one of the signs of being an intellectual is the capacity to hold pluralistic ideas. They can be two. You are able to say, okay, I know that there are people who practice polygamy and there are people, the majority, who practice monogamy.
Yes.
Okay, and I even though I disagree with them, I recognize their existence and their provision before the law. I think a lot of us are like you, very opinionated, very biased, not rooted in scripture. And because of that, a lot of men, again, like you, have wives secretly. And at the funeral, and I can tell you, out of 10 funerals that I conduct, about 7, 8 times, there is another woman and another family. This should stop. But it's the intimidation that is put on by people like you who impose your prejudices on others that say you cannot be a Christian if you have more than one wife. And you can't do that. You cannot have a theological representation that says a Christian is only supposed to have one wife. I cannot see that.
Let me come in here, Pastor Sempa. I think when we look at the law, it doesn't necessarily say that because someone has one wife, they're unchristian. However,
Which law are you talking about?
The Marriage Act. However, it does state that it bases on the doctrines of the religions where these marriages are conducted. When you look at Christian marriages, they follow the New Testament, which prescribes monogamy. And because of that, the law is based on that Christian marriages
Who tells them to follow the New Testament?
That you can tell me,
No,
you're
no,
the
no,
theologian here,
yeah.
but that is what you do know.
No,
that
I
our
think-
Christian,
I
that our
globally-
churches.
I think there is-
Pastor
It's not
Sempa,
rocket
let me
science.
try to put something into context.
No, I want
What
to
was-
understand.
Yes.
Is Christianity only based on the recognition of only the New Testament?
It is not, but do you know for sure that our churches here in Uganda, the Catholic
Globally.
Church, the Anglican Church, and the Pentecostals follow, as far as marriage is concerned, follow the tenets of the New Testament, right?
I believe it's not only the New Testament, it's from the Old Testament, the ideal teaching on marriage is monogamy.
Yes.
And I want you to, I'm on the same team with you. But I also want to say I recognize that there's other Christians.
No, what I was trying
and
to
the state does not have a right
What I
to
was
say
trying-
Christians can only be of this type.
What I was trying to clarify was that the state doesn't say that you're unchristian because
Yes,
you
it
have
does.
another,
Yes, it does.
Because
Yes, it
you
does.
have your polygamous.
And I will tell you
the state
why.
says we will only recognize one Christian marriage,
No,
which is polygamy.
Okay, unlike
It
you.
doesn't say you're unchristian.
It does, by
How?
implication. If you the case of Mr. Wanyama versus the Attorney General in Kenya, okay, who again we have a very similar provision because of the European Commonwealth legal drafting process that marriage is by Christian marriage is by implication monogamous, monogamous because of the strong influence of the Christian and European view. Now, Mr. Wanyama is saying, look, I'm a Christian. I have 2 wives. I want to wed my second wife. I already have 2 children with her. And the law says you can't.
And what does the doctrine of the church where he wants to marry
The doctrine
his second wife
agrees.
say?
He's part of a church that teaches that marriages can either be monogamous or polygamous. It's you to choose. So the state refusing
even
the
here we
church,
have also
I want you to finish. The
allows
state
that,
refusing the church to conduct the wedding is a violation of his constitutional rights.
Okay, I understand that.
Now that's
If-
the
if you
same. I
say-
want to avoid that in Uganda.
Okay, if you say that the church where he goes
Yes.
recognizes both polygamous and,
And
monogamous,
monogamous, yes.
I think that's a different issue for the case of Uganda because our churches do not recognize
How do you
polygamy.
know? How do you know? I know there are churches. I do know. I talk with pastors. Let me tell you.
Pastors that openly tell their congregations that we recognize polygamous marriages.
In my discussion with many pastors, many privately approve of what I'm saying, but they are afraid. They are afraid.
So should we go with
I want you to listen to me. Because listen, I want you to listen to me. You see, there is people who are socially controlled by the opinions of people.
Yes.
And sometimes when you have people who are ignorant or manipulable, you can do. But there are others who are not. I am not controlled by opinions of people. My commitment to the truth. For 15 years, I have been fighting against homosexuality, regardless of what Barack Obama said, David Cameron, and others, even here in Uganda. Just recently, the judges made a very bold decision on the case, which is very contested right now, the issue of the court martials. But they wrote their conscience. That's what we need.
Now, Pastor Sempa,
so many pastors do not think that there's no theology or theologians or churches that teach a dual carriage of monogamous and polygamous churches, marriages.
Be that as it
may. They are there.
Be that as it may.
But right now, the Constitution says you cannot discriminate.
Be that as it may, Pastor, for the pastors that privately believe and agree that polygamy should be recognized by the church or the wider church. Let's go back to Uganda's
but
law.
the law.
Yes,
I need you to see the difference here.
Let's go back to Uganda's
law. A lot of you
law.
Are discussing as if I was speaking in a church.
Okay.
Just a minute. If I'm preaching in a church, I'm not preaching polygamy.
So, Pastor, can we say
my speech
are legally right,
my speech,
morally wrong?
No.
Spiritually very wrong.
No, they are different. There are different kinds of theological positions.
Pastor Sempa.
If you would like one kind of position, that is unilateral. That is one. Okay? We are not of one only. The Bible talks about families existing either in monogamous and polygamous.
Yes.
To exclude polygamous families from the Christendom is a violation of the constitutional provision of non-discrimination.
So, Pastor, can I just want to understand. Are there things that can be morally right but legally wrong? Are there things that can be legally right but spiritually wrong?
Yes, they can be, but this is not what we're discussing. We're discussing the denial, excuse me, we're discussing the denial of someone who wants to have a wedding with his second wife, but the law is refusing them. The refusal of that person's wish is a violation of the Constitution.
Gentlemen, we have
some comments coming through. And so we're not dealing with morality, but we're dealing here with the constitutional provision that, hey, you cannot discriminate and say, oh, this is the only kind of Christians that I know. And I know people are shocked and surprised, but that's fine.
We have some comments coming through, and the first one is from Chigwe Livingston Subuga of Rezandeja Division, and he says, in my personal understanding, in a layman's point of view, when one marries a second wife, it shouldn't be taken as non-Christian because there are so many reasons that force men to marry another wife, and men cannot necessarily chase away the first wife. And he goes on to say, and in one way or the other, women are in big numbers than men worldwide. If the issue of one woman, one man was strict, then most of the women would be single. Actually, in some countries where this is strictly enforced, he means polygamy, rather monogamy, he says women developed bad habits like lesbianism and other related habits. He goes on to say, but all in all, having two wives doesn't mean that one is non-Christian, because you will realize that a man with one wife does more havoc than one with two wives. I thank you, Pastor Sempa, for your significant and controversial issues you always put on the floor. That is from Chigwe Livingston. And the next comment says, thank you for the program. Thank you, our dear guest. This is a good program for sure regarding the security. No, you're commenting on the wrong topic. Now, this one says, renowned late Reverend Canon Kamujanduzi, father to late Justice Kenneth Kakuru refused to take part in the wedding of His Highness Gatsonga, King of Ankore. He insisted that he would recognize him as a Christian, but on condition of being denied some church rituals. The next comment says, the Old Testament was before Christ and the New Testament was written after Christ. I'm wondering, and I want to hear from Pastor Sempa, and I am shocked that he's supporting the Old Testament just because of such verses that portray polygamy biblically. And he says marriage should be between one man and one woman, and whoever decides not to marry, then it must be for serving God, and that's where our Catholic Church comes in. And he says please be rooted in Christ. I have so many more comments, but please, your response to the
I think the first one, it shows you that there are reasons why exceptional circumstances. Now, a lot of us live in a perfect world. Okay? You live in a perfect world in the mind. But the reality is we live in what's called a fallen world. That is the like what you talked about, where you have more women than men. Okay, there's exceptional circumstances. What do we do that? Actually in the book of Isaiah, it says, in the last days, 7 women will go to one man and say, please, we are tired of being ashamed. Would you marry us? Now, that is what is called exceptional. Please stay with me. Exceptional circumstances. Yeah. So my first degree was in sociology, and one of the papers I did was demography. Where you're looking at the statistics. I was looking also again at the recent report of Uganda's census, which my friend Chris Mukiza put out of UBOS. You can see there is more women than men.
That's right. And
for us as elders, we must also address this issue. Don't just pretend about it. For example, there is this the technology of what is this where you have someone carry your eggs.
Freezing.
What is not freezing.
Surrogacy.
Surrogacy.
Yes.
Okay. Now, the surrogacy issue also, it's where people are not able to have babies or for whatever reason, and they have some. It's an issue for debate. We need to bring it out
don't believe
and discuss it.
Yes.
Some do, some don't.
Yes.
So I think for us, both in terms of recognizing what is the biblical teaching, what is the the circumstances under which we're in, and deal with that. We must not, people should not walk away saying Pastor Sempa has changed to Christian polygamy. No, I've not. I'm only asking the government to recognize that even that minority exists. And my pointing that they exist and they should be accorded the law does not mean that I have changed. No, I'm not promoting them.
Because one would think you're promoting.
No, I'm not.
From my understanding, what Pastor
I'm
Sempa
not promoting
is
polygamy. I'm asking when the law to provide for legality. Listen, there is wife number 2 somewhere. Okay, who knows? And she's there, wife number 3. When I had that teaching at the Uganda Matters Day, it was June the 3rd. You can go back and listen to it. I keep a record on different subjects. And the preacher said, kati bwe mugenda okuddayo, it was in Luganda. Kati abaami abalina abakyala abasukka mu 2 abasatu, if you have more than one wife, this year, chase away wife number 3 and the children. Then the following year, chase away wife number 2. I begin to think deeply as a theologian. Does a Christian means breaking families down and chase? What is going on?
No, it doesn't.
Now,
Pastor Sempa,
these are painful, hard issues that we need to face, and a lot of people have a lot of they carry baggage, institutional baggage. You can't say because you are the pastor, you have these elders, you have these ones, they will misunderstand. I mean, right now I'm misunderstood. Okay? Right now I'm very misunderstood.
Sempa,
that people are saying Pastor now has changed. His Christianity is now promoting polygamy.
Church is going to
His church is going to entertain.
polygamy.
No, I need you to know,
Pastor
I'm not conducting polygamous weddings. I've not changed to a polygamous mindset. I have simply said I recognize the right of those people as a theological group to exist before the law.
Is someone who wants
Chirabo,
to be
our
wedded.
time
Yes,
is
let
fast.
him be wedded.
Gentlemen,
Let him be wedded.
Pastor Sempa.
And we should not treat them like second class. No, listen.
Pastor
We can't
Sempa,
stop them.
our time is fast.
But I'd like to give
I
my-
would like
I'd like
to
to
hear
give-
your parting remarks
Sure, yeah.
as we come to the end of the program.
I think two things. I'd like to get your feedback. There's another bill being discussed called the Sexual Offences Bill. I know I discussed this with recently, 2014, with Matembe. There's some contentious issues. So we need to be up to speed. Don't just pray. Be reading and studying and make your position. But I want to announce that we are at a position of great victory. After 15 years of persecution, from the time of Barack Obama's ascendancy, when he became the president in 2008, late inaugurated 2009, his government made an executive order that said we are now going to recognize LGBTQ and we will combat any country that makes a law against homosexuality. So America has been at war with Uganda, and I have written the book on this. This is coming out on March the 18th. The first copies are on sale. The first 100 copies are on sale. It's $100 signed for the first 100 copies. Okay. And then after that, the price will come down. I'm going to give my number. My number is 0772 64 10 28. 0772 64 10 28. This is not a book about polygamy. This is the book about defending the family as God planned it against homosexuality.
Okay.
You can also follow me on my social media. I'm very much on my Twitter. My social media handle is @MartinSempa, which is Martin with 2 S's, @MartinSempa. And I think I'm also on Instagram, Pastor Sempa.
All
Pastor
right.
with
Thank
Pastor
you
A.
so much, Pastor Sempa. And thank you, dear viewer, for being part of the conversation. Thank you so much for your views and comments. Well, Good Morning Uganda does continue.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala, this is Good Morning Uganda.
Pick of the day on UBC.
One-on-one with Michael Jordan Lukomwa.
A weekly face-to-face conversation focusing on accountability, inspiration, information, and sensitization of the public from the various sources, such as inspirational profiles.
Having a disability is not inability.
Every Friday 9 p.m., it's one-on-one with Michael Jordan Lukomwa.